Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I dive into today's review, I do want to mention if you enjoy the Gaming Gang, there are a few ways that you can support the outlet. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG, and to do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com. Click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. It is absolutely free to come hang with the gang over on Discord. Today, I'll be sharing my review of the Vaesen Starter Set from Free League Publishing. This is available now. In fact, I shared a first look on the Gaming Gang Dispatch about a week and a half ago, and it carries an MSRP of $29.99. That will include the PDF if you order from Free League Publishing. If you want to just get the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $14.99. Having said all that, let's swing out over to the other camera because here I've got the starter set for Vaesen. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Free League Publishing were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the booklets within, each and every pre-generated character and handout, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, there is a short introductory adventure contained in the starter set. So if you're a player and your game master has bought this, maybe they just haven't started running it yet, maybe they're talking about picking this up. I am going to stay mainly spoiler free, but you're probably going to see a few things which might spoil surprises of that adventure. So you have been warned. Now, of course, if your game master is kicking around buying the starter set, let them know about this review. That way they can approach this and make a far more informed buying decision. So let's talk about what's inside the starter set. We have custom dice. These are cut dice. We have 10 six-sided dice. This utilizes a dice pool mechanic. I really like the fact that we've got 10 dice. Because normally, if memory serves, I think the Vaesen dice sets have 5, maybe 6. So we're getting quite a few dice here. And they have a special symbol for the 6. Because on a 6-sided die, a 6 is a success. And that is what you're attempting to do when you're making a skill test. So we got those dice there. Very nice. We also have a little deck of initiative cards. They are numbered 1 through 10. During combat, the game master is going to deal out initiative cards, and you will go in order from 1 to 10. So you're not counting down initiative, you're actually counting up. We have a little sheet here talking about getting started, talking about some of the other adventures, and then giving thanks to the mythic level backers of the Kickstarter. So we have 3 different booklets. The first one we're going to take a look at is the rules. Now, at the same time this came out, the new revised core rulebook for Vaesen also hit stores. Keep in mind, obviously enough, the revised rulebook is going to have a lot more detail. There are a few mechanics that really aren't touched on in the starter set, but for the most part, you're getting the core elements of Vaesen in this very short rulebook. I love that. That's very, very cool. I could honestly see people running some of the adventures which are available in the different collections, which Free League Publishing has already published with just the rules from the starter set. I could easily see that. So first thing we'll do is take a look at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. And of course, this role-playing game is based upon the artwork of Johan Egerkrans. We also have Anton Vitus. I think That might be how it's pronounced, providing illustrations for this also. So we'll get a quick introduction. And this is a rules light investigative horror role-playing game, which takes place in the mythic North. So we get a mix of 19th century history as well as mythology and legend, mainly focused on Nordic horror, although we do have some other supplements out there, such as Mythic Britain. We have Mythic Carpathia that just came out. I shared a first look at that last week also. But for the most part, we are looking at Nordic horror. So we'll get some information about the player characters. There are no rules for creating characters in this starter set, which is kind of par for the course for most starter sets. We do have some pre-generated characters, though. We'll take a peek at those in just a bit. So we have attributes and we also have skills. So we have physique, precision, logic, and empathy as our attributes. And then we've got a variety of skills. These are very broad in their application. Once again, as I mentioned, this is a relatively rules light role-playing game. So when you're making a skill test, you're going to take your attributes as well as the associated skill. You're going to add the two totals together. So as an example, let's say I've got a physique of 2 and an agility of 2, and I need to make an agility test. So I'm going to take 4 6-sided dice, and I am looking to roll a 6, which I did not. So I would have failed. Now I can't push rolls normally. So if I want, I can roll again, knowing that if I fail a second time, there are going to be some serious consequences to that. And of course, as with most role-playing games, failing sometimes is pretty cool too, because it's just going to create an additional complication. We also have opposed rolls. We have the fact that if something's easy, the game master will probably give additional dice. If something's very difficult, they're going to take away dice. And on occasion, you may need to roll more than one success in order to achieve what you're looking to do. That is very rare, though. So that's pretty much the mechanics of Vaesen. It's rolling 6-sided dice. It is a dice pool mechanic. I would have failed again. So very easy to wrap your head around. We have combat. Combat is pretty abstract. So as far as combat goes, we have that initiative where the GM's going to deal out the cards. Players can swap initiative if they would like. And each round, players can perform one slow action and one fast action. So we've got dodging and parrying, attacking. Now, what'll happen is when you take damage, you'll actually take conditions. So we have physical and mental conditions. So you can have 3 physical or 3 mental. Once that happens, you are out of action. Now, does that mean that your character is taking a dirt nap? No, not necessarily. They may have been just knocked out of action, or maybe they've just snapped and they just can't handle the terror anymore. So we have damage here in conditions, talks about that. And that's pretty much it. We get some information about recovery as far as recovering from those physical and mental conditions. And that is our quick little rule book. We also have some player aids. And of course, the game master can utilize these as well for themselves. It's going to give us a breakdown of how you play. Skill tests, helping, pushing, slow and fast actions, dodging, parrying, conditions, fear. It is all right here. So all of those rules, for the most part, are boiled down and placed on these player aids. We have pre-generated characters. So we have 5 of them for the adventure, which is contained within front and back. We have a little bit of background about each of the pre-gens, as well as some artwork for them. And we've got a nice range of different characters. Now, this does take place in the 19th century. I kind of lean more towards the late 19th century, but there are elements from the early 19th century that are part of Vaesen as well. So keep in mind, this is not necessarily a historically accurate role-playing game, nor does it need to be. We'll have a couple of maps. This is the map the players will receive during the adventure of Castle Gillenkreuz. There's only a single side to that. We also have the Mythic North on one side of this. Gotta say, paper stock on these are really nice. And then we have the city of Uppsala, which is where the player character's headquarters will be located. So the player characters are investigators who will become part of a society. Now, they're not part of the society just yet. That's what the introductory adventure is for. But if you are going to be running a campaign with those characters, they are going to become part of a society which goes in and investigates supernatural and paranormal activity, many times caused by the legendary Vaesen. Speaking of, we also have this Codex Occultum, which I like a ton. This is actually a booklet that's going to be given to the players. So this is some assembled knowledge about the different Vaesen out there, how to deal with them. I will mention there are some side boxes here with supposed to be handwritten information, little difficult to read because of the size of this. So this is even a little bit smaller than an A5. So I found it a little difficult to make out the handwritten portions. Nothing terrible, but still, if you're utilizing PDFs, it won't be an issue at all. But I love this. I thought this was so cool. And of course, this can be utilized with other adventures, right? This isn't only for this starting adventure. Speaking of, we've got some handouts from the starting adventure right here. Nicely done. And then we have our introductory adventure, The Haunting of Castle Gillenkreuz. I'm sure I mispronounced that. And I will say, this is probably my least favorite aspect of this starter set. Let's take a look at the credits once again. One thing I love about Vaesen is the creatures themselves and the adventures that have been published so far, because the creatures aren't necessarily evil. Now, some of them are, but some are just living alongside human beings. Now, most people can't see them because most people don't have the sight, which the player characters do happen to have. And something I found really interesting is how it's normally the humans that cause the problems in these adventures. I like that quite a lot. It's not necessarily the supernatural elements. Now, of course, some of the adventures that have been published, yes, of course they are. But I also love the fact that there's kind of a bit of a sad vibe, kind of a melancholy that runs through some of the adventures for Vaesen, which makes this a very unique sort of setting. This is not Free League Publishing's Rules Light version of Call of Cthulhu by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it goes a long way to setting it apart from other horror role-playing games out there. Just the vibe that is present in the adventures. Sadly, it's not really in this. This is pretty straightforward, and there are some interesting set pieces. The adventure itself is probably going to take maybe a session. About 4 hours is what I would guess. If your sessions are shorter than that, yeah, you're probably going to stretch it out to a couple of sessions. But all in all, I just found the adventure itself to be all right. And there you go. There's your spoiler right there. If you know what that is, as I just flipped on past. But all in all, very nicely presented starter set. Free League Publishing is really on top of starter sets. They do really nice work. There's only been one over the years that I wasn't too keen on. I've mentioned this prior. Their starting set reviews I've done, and that was the Tales from the Loop starter set. There just really wasn't anything to it. That's not the case here. As I already pointed out, I could easily see players actually utilizing just these rules and being able to tackle some of the published adventures that are already out there, because you've got the core elements of the role-playing game right here in this short rule book. Of course, you don't have all the details, and there are some mechanics that are not covered in here, but still very, very nicely done. All right, let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. As far as production quality, really well done. Paper stock, even though they're just booklets, paper stock is still really nice. It's what we expect from Free League Publishing. The dice are nice. They're cut dice, so they're not silk screen dice. And of course, we got the little deck of initiative cards. Pretty solid card stock with those as well. So you are getting a really solid value for $29.99. I really love everything in the starter set except for the adventure. It's not a bad adventure. It's not a terrible adventure. Just for myself, I felt it doesn't capture what really makes Vaesen stand out as a horror role-playing game, or as a kind of Nordic horror role-playing game. Like I said, adventure's fine. Just didn't have that extra oomph that I'm used to seeing with just about all of the Vaesen adventures. But all in all, a very nicely presented starter set. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Vaesen Starter Set from Free League Publishing a 7.5 out of 10. If you had been curious about this role-playing game, this is a perfect introduction to it. Even though I will point out, usually the published adventures are better than what's included in the starter set. Just have to mention that one last time. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it's supposed to let you know not only when I share videos such as this review, it'll also notify you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.